You forgave them in silence. You never said the words out loud. You never sent the text that says, "It's okay." You never gave them the relief of hearing you say, "I forgive you." And then, without a single goodbye, you disappeared forever. No fight, no final speech, no slamming door, just quiet silence. And that right there is the most brutal revenge a human being can ever serve. No screaming, no revenge plots, no pity posts or at midnight. Just you gone, while they're left standing in a room that still smells like you, holding a phone that will never light up with your name again. God, you will never speak to them again. Sit with that for 1 second, because that single sentence is about to wreck someone's entire world, and they don't even know it yet. Here is what nobody tells you about silence. It's not the absence of a reaction. It's the loudest reaction there is. People think revenge has to be loud, has to be messy, has to involve someone losing their mind in a parking lot or sending a novel of a text message explaining every single way they got hurt. But real power, the actual power changes, the kind of that actual changes another person's life forever. Looks like nothing at all. It looks like you waking up one morning and quietly deciding that this chapter is closed, that you already forgave them somewhere in the privacy of your own heart. And that forgiveness was never for them. It was for you. So you could live without dragging the weight of resentment out the door with you. I forgave you for me, but I'm living for my future. And once you forgive in silence, you walk out without a word. There is no version of you they can ever reach again. That's the part that's going to haunt them for years. Picture with me for a second, because I want you to really feel this. Picture the person who hurt you, someone somewhere down the line, weeks or months from now, lying awake at 2 in the morning. The apartment is quiet, the phone is sitting face up on the nightstand, and they keep glancing at it, even though they know there's nothing coming. No message, no missed calls, no little blue dot, just the ordinary, indifferent dark of a phone that has officials stopped waiting for them to need it. And in that silence, in that nothing, something starts to crawl up their spine that they cannot name yet. It's not sadness exactly. It's recognition. It's the slow, sick realization that somewhere along the way you stopped being a person who was hurting because of them and became a person who simply left. And there is nothing more disorienting to someone's ego than discovering they were forgiven and abandoned in the same breath without ever being told either thing. You expect me to be bitter, but I'm actually just done. Let's talk about what actually happens inside someone's head when they push you away, expecting you to come back, and instead you don't. Because that's the trap they set without even realizing it. They tested you. Maybe they pulled back to see if you'd cheese. Maybe they said something cold, something cruel, something designed to see how far they could push before you'd crawl back and prove one more time that you were not going anywhere. They were betting on history. Yeah, they were betting on the version of you who always returned, who always explained, who always tried one more time, even when it cost you everything. They expected anger, because anger means you still care enough to fight. They expected tears, because tears mean they still have power over your nervous system. They expected one more long message at midnight. Walls of text trying to make them understand how much they hurt you. Because every paragraph you typed was proof that you hadn't left yet. Not really. What they didn't expect, what they couldn't have, what they could have never have prepared for was quiet. Total, complete, unshakable quiet. Because quiet doesn't beg, quiet doesn't explain, quiet doesn't give them anything to argue with, anything to twist, anything to use. The moment you go silent is the moment you take every single tool out of their hands. I'm not holding a grudge. I'm holding a boundary. My silence isn't a weakness. It's a final answer. And here's the part that makes this so brutal, since silence forces a person to sit alone with their own reflection. And most people cannot survive that for very long without flinching. When you're loud, when you're angry, when you're explaining yourself, you are giving them a mirror that shows their version of events. They can argue with that, they can manage that. But when there is nothing, when the explanations stop, when the late night messages stop, when even the sad, indirect posts stop, the only thing left in that empty silence, empty space, is their own conscience, staring back at them with nowhere left to hide. That's the cruelty of forgiveness mixed with disappearance. You didn't even leave them a villain to be. You just left them with themselves. Silence is the loudest way to tell someone they no longer matter. And that's exactly why it works, because you're not attacking them, you are simply withdrawing your presence, which is the most valuable thing you once gave them for free. The first thing they will feel, almost immediately, is a relief. And I want you to understand that this relief is not what it looks like on the surface. It feels to them, they got away with something. Not drama, no confrontation, no uncomfortable conversation where they'd have to look you in the eye and explain why they did what they did. Just an easy, clean exit, and their ego will tell them quietly that you will be back. That's just how it goes, right? People always come back. They'll convince themselves you're somewhere on the other side of this silence, still hurting, still checking their social media at 1 a.m., still waiting by the phone for them to decide they are ready. For a few days, maybe even a couple of weeks, that belief will hold. It will feel almost peaceful to them. They will go about their life. They will post like everything's fine. They might even tell people you two are figuring things out. Because admitting you actually left fully and completely would mean admitting they lost something they took for granted. But you didn't lose me to an argument. You lost me to my peace of mind. But relief always curls into curiosity, and curiosity is where the real unraveling begins. The days they expected a message turn into weeks, the week turns into 2, and somewhere in there they start checking, quietly at first, a glance at your profile picture, a scroll through your stories, just to see if you're okay, just to see if there is a crack somewhere they can use. They are looking for evidence, a sad caption, a vague, broken-hearted quote, a late-night post that says, "I miss someone," without naming names. Because if they can find that one crumb, they can tell themselves the story they need, that you are still hurting, still tethered to them, still theirs in some invisible way. But you forgave them in silence, remember? There is no resentment leaking out in captions, because you already let it go before you even shut the door. There is nothing for them to find. No traces, no symptoms, just a person living their life like the relationship never happened. And that absence of evidence becomes its own kind of evidence. Proof that you are, in fact, completely fine without them. And for someone who built their identity around being unforgettable, completely fine without them is the most threatening sentence in language. You will realize what you lost when you try to replace me and find only echoes. This is actually when the testing starts. A like on an old photo from 2 years ago, a comment somewhere they know you will see it. Maybe a story that's just a little too obvious, aimed at you, a flex, look how great my life is post, timed just right. They are fishing, they are trying to provoke even the smallest reaction. Anger, jealousy, sadness, anything that proves they still matter to your nervous system. And when none of that lands, when you don't comment back, don't like it, don't even seem to notice, something in them starts to genuinely panic. Because for the first time, they are the one performing for an audience that isn't watching. They are the one waiting. They are the one refreshing. The power quietly and completely has changed hands. And they didn't even see it happen because there was no fight to mark the moment it shifted. You are waiting for my reaction. But I'm busy building my life. I'm not ghosting you. I'm protecting my energy. The most brutal thing I can do is let you live with the version of me you created in your head. After curiosity comes fear, and this is where it actually starts to cost them something real. Fear that this isn't a phase, fear that you are not coming back this time, Fear that somewhere out there you are building a life that doesn't include a single thought of them. And the brutal twist in all of this is that the fear doesn't come from anything you did to them. It comes from what you didn't do. You didn't fight, you didn't beg, you didn't send the angry message they could have used to convince themselves you were crazy or too much. You simply forgave them quietly in a place they could never reach and walk away clean. There is no narrative for them to tell that makes them the victim in the story. Because a victim has someone chasing them, punishing them, refusing to let go. You let go so completely that there is nothing left to hold onto on either side. And that absence of a fight is the loudest confirmation they will ever get that you meant it. I choose to stop fighting a war that had no winners. The moment I stopped responding was the moment I won. Now I want to take you somewhere deeper, because this isn't just about what happens to them, it's about what happens to you. For me, it's the most important thing. And how this silence transforms you into someone they will never be able to reach again. Think of it like this. Forgiving in silence and disappearing is like being a ship that sails into the fog. You don't sink the other person's boat, and you don't stay to fight the storm. You simply vanish from their radar. They are left screaming at the ocean, but you already miles away in calm waters. And your silence is the only sound they will ever hear again. That's the power of moving on without announcing it. You are not staying in a toxic loop. You are withdrawing into your own peace, and your own energy is now too expensive for them to afford. I'm leaving the door closed, not because I'm angry, but because there is nothing left to say. Some people deserve your forgiveness, but not everyone deserves your presence. And that distinction is everything, because forgiveness is the key, but disappearing is the lock on the door. Then, eventually, our regret arrives. And regret is heavier than anything that came before it, because by the time it shows up, it's too late to do anything with it. This is the stage where every memory they brushed off starts replaying on a loop they cannot turn off. The times you tried to talk and they shut you down. The times you showed up and they took it for granted. The nights you sat with your own hurt quietly instead of making it their problem, because you were already, even then, choosing peace over war. Those moments hit differently in hindsight, when there is no version of you left to apologize to. They will want to reach out, they will draft messages they never send, or send ones that go unanswered, watching them sit there with one gray check mark and no reply. And that silence on the other end will feel like the loudest sound they have ever heard. Because here's the truth about regret. It isn't about losing you. It's about realizing far too late that you were never coming back to the last over, to be lost over. You had already peacefully said goodbye inside yourself long before they noticed you were gone. I didn't block you. I just moved to a place where your voice cannot reach me. Now let's talk about what this silence is actually doing underneath the surface, because it's doing more than just making them uncomfortable. It's completely rewriting how they understand who you are. When someone hurts you and expects a reaction, they are operating off an old story, a story where you are the person who always comes back, who always needs them more than they need you, who can be lost and found again in their schedule. The moment you go quiet and stay quiet, that story falls apart sentence by sentence. Every single day that passes without contact. They start to wonder if they ever really knew you at all. Were you really as easy to keep around as they assumed? Were you really going to wait forever? Or were you this whole time simply choosing to stay? It was your choice. Right up until the moment you chose not to. That question, was I ever really irreplaceable to them? Or was I just comfortable? Is one of the most destabilizing thing a person can sit with. Because there is no way to answer it without confronting how they treated you when they thought you were not or going anywhere. I stopped trying to prove you wrong, and I started proving myself right. Closure doesn't always come from a conversation. Sometimes it comes from a clean break. And here is something people rarely talk about. The longer the silence holds, the more valuable your absence becomes in their mind. This isn't about playing games or trying to seem mysterious. It's simply psychology. Yeah, it's simple psychology. When something is constantly available, the brain stops noticing its worth. But the moment it's gone, fully, permanently gone, the brain starts inflating its value, replaying every good moment in slow motion, conveniently, forgetting the moments that made you leave in the first place. They will remember the laughter and forget the way they dismissed you. They will remember the comfort and forget the way they made you feel small. That's not your problem to fix. That's the natural cost of losing someone who finally stopped explaining themselves. I'm letting you go, but I am keeping the lessons. I also want to understand something important about why this works so much better than confrontation ever could. When you argue with someone, when you tell them exactly how they hurt you, you are handing them a script. They can defend themselves against a script. They can twist your words, make you sound dramatic, turn the conversation into something about your tone instead of their actions. But silence has no script. There is nothing to defend against, nothing to twist, nothing to argue with at all. All they are left is their own imagination and the human mind. left alone in uncertainty, almost always builds the worst possible version of events. They don't know if you're devastated or thriving. They don't know if you cried for weeks or felt nothing but relief. They don't know if there is someone else, if you're better, if you ever think about them at all. And that not knowing becomes its own quiet form of torment, one you never have to lift a finger to maintain. My disappearance is the only closure you are ever going to get. Let's be honest about something else too. Staying silent is genuinely one of the hardest things a person can do, especially when every instinct in your body is screaming at you to explain, to clarify, to make sure they understand exactly why you are leaving. The ego wants closure. The heart wants the last word. But the moment you break your silence just to prove a point, just to make sure they get it, you hand every bit of power straight back into their hands. Because now you have given them something to respond to, something to use, something to keep the connection alive in some form. The real strength isn't in studying the silence. It's the staying in it, especially on the days it hurts the most, especially on the nights. You want so badly to send the one message just to see if they'd respond. Real silence only works if you let it be silence, fully, without exceptions, without just checking, without weak moments disguised as closure. But here's the thing nobody mentions enough. This silence isn't supposed to be empty on your end. Even if it looks empty from the outside, while they are spiraling, checking, regretting, and rewriting the story of who you were, you are supposed to be quietly becoming someone new, not performing it for them, not posting your glow up like a billboard aimed in their direction, just living it privately for yourself. Because the most devastating thing they will ever witness isn't your absence. It's the version of you that absence allowed you to become. The mornings you start choosing yourself instead of waiting for someone else's approval. The nights you spend rebuilding instead of replaying old conversations. The slow, unglamorous work of remembering who you were before you shrank yourself down to feed into someone else's comfort. That's not revenge in the petty sense. That's just what happens naturally when a person stops pouring their energy into someone who never noticed the cost of it, and starts pouring it back into themselves. And eventually, if it happens at all, they will reach out. Maybe weeks from now, maybe months, maybe on some random Tuesday when nothing in particular happened, except that the silence finally became unbearable. And here's the part that makes this so brutal, so final. By the time they do, they will not be reaching out to the same person they hurt. They will be reaching for someone who doesn't exist anymore. The version of you who would have answered on the first ring, who would have forgive who would have forgiven out loud and stayed, who needed an apology to feel okay again. That version already said goodbye, quietly, a long time ago, somewhere they couldn't see. What they will find instead is someone steady, someone who doesn't need their explanation to feel whole, someone who already forgave them in private for their own peace and has absolutely no intention of reopening a door that was never slammed, just gently, permanently closed. Yeah. That's why this is the most brutal kind of revenge there is. Not because you set out to hurt them. You didn't, not even a little. You simply chose your own peace over the exhausting work of making someone understand why they lost you. You forgave them in silence because carrying anger that far would have cost you more than it ever cost them. And then you disappear. Not out of spite, but because there was genuinely nothing left to stay for. No fight, no closure, no drama, just quiet. And that quiet is going to outlast every apology they never got to the chance to give. Every message they typed and deleted. Every 2 a.m. scroll through old photos looking for the version of you that's never coming back. You never speaking to them again isn't punishment. It's peace. It's protection. It's the simple, undeniable truth that some people only understand what they lost once the silence make it impossible to ignore. So let them wonder. Let them replay it. Let them sit with the realization that the loudest thing you ever said to them was nothing at all. And that you meant every single second of it. If this hits something in you, if you have ever forgiven someone quietly and walked away without ever telling them, so drop a comment and let me know. Because I want to know, because that kind of strength deserves to be acknowledged, even if the person it was for never knows it happened.